Welcome. Would you pray with me, please? God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing and acceptable to you this day, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Today's gospel lesson is a big sticking point for me. It begins, as you heard earlier, the 14th chapter of the Gospel according to John, and this is part of Jesus's farewell discourse to his disciples. So we're going pre-Easter just a little bit to help us frame what is really at the heart of the matter, what it really means to have love as our religion. Jesus begins, Don't let your hearts be troubled. You have faith in God. And I want to say to Jesus, I'm sorry, my heart is troubled. And I don't want you to tell me what I should or shouldn't feel. My heart is very troubled. My heart is troubled because it has now been 8 weeks. 2 months since you and I have been able to gather in the sanctuary or in the worship center, to even be on our campus and be in relationship one-on-one or one in a small gathering. And I don't know when we'll be able to do that again. And I do know, and my heart is troubled, that however and whenever we get together again to worship in person, it will be different. My heart is troubled because of this virus and the lack of seriousness for some people in understanding that it affects anybody at any time. My heart is troubled by those who would put others at risk because of their own behavior. My heart is troubled by the racism we're seeing show up in this country. It's been here for a long, long time. But it is truly being opened to the light of day, and my heart is so troubled by how we treat each other. My heart is troubled for those who have to choose between work and feeding their family and being healthy, putting their own health at risk. My heart is troubled by children who in this time of education at home and online perhaps don't have the resources that others have to help them in these difficult days. My heart is troubled by what's happening in our nursing homes, our most vulnerable people needing to be cared for and tended and loved, and now in such great harm and seemingly somewhat ignored. My heart is troubled for all of this and so much more. My own family, my dad so far away in northern Wisconsin, it coming to be Mother's Day weekend and I can't see my daughter or my son and daughter-in-law and my granddaughters. Perhaps your heart is troubled too. One of the things that troubles me the most in all of this, and believe there are many on that most category, is that what is being revealed through this virus is to me a humanity that is disconnected from its source, that is disconnected from the life force of all creation. All of our disconnection from God is showing up, not only here in this country, but throughout the world. These troubles that are bigger than this virus, even though this virus makes every one of us vulnerable. What is being revealed, I believe, makes us more vulnerable than ever to humanity as a whole surviving. Jesus goes on in this text as he's sharing with his disciples, and he says, "Where I am, you will be also. You know the way." You know the way, he says. Really? Thomas asks the question right then, "But we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way?" And Jesus replies to Thomas, saying, "I am the way. I myself am the way. I am the truth. I am the life." And we often tend to look at this text as the way to get to heaven. Jesus is the way. I wanted to broaden that understanding right now, because I think what Jesus is truly telling Thomas and his followers is that he shows us the way, the truth, and the life by how he lives and interacts with God and with his neighbor, with all of humanity. And so for us, as we look at following the way, the truth, and the life, it's about how we live right now. It's about how we treat others. It's about the things that we do, the beliefs that we hold about how we are connected to each other, and that each one of our actions affects more than ourselves. That Jesus, as the way that we are to live, is about how we are in relationship with each other and with all of creation. And then Jesus gets kind of thrown another part of this from Philip. As there, you can imagine them sitting having this conversation, and Philip says, "But show us God, and that will be enough for us." And I can imagine Jesus sitting there being very incensed, going, "What do you mean, show you God? I have been here with you. Do you not know yet that God is in me and I am in God, and together we have this way of being with you, and we are all connected?" And then he goes on to talk about the heart and the truth of the matter. "Anyone who has faith in me will do the works that I do, and greater works." So again, we look to today, and that our life and our relationship with God and our understanding of faith is to do something, is to act. In Jesus' own words, "You will do the works I do, and greater works." What does that mean for us in the midst of this time that we are? And I'm taken back even to this morning. I'm recording this on Friday, and we've been hearing stories all week in the news about racism in this country, and about a man being shot in February in Georgia. Ahmaud Arbery, and I apologize in mispronouncing his name. But there was some things on Facebook in the last couple of days for people to take a run this morning in honor and memory of him, and to stand up for people, not only him, but for others who are pushed aside and not valued in our communities and in our world. I've been out walking almost every day these 2 months that we've been separated. I've missed a few days here and there. And in the midst of walking, every couple of days I try to run. And in this 63-year-old body, that's not an easy thing to do anymore. But I try to run because it gives me a feeling, a true felt sense of freedom. And I tell you what, this morning, that hit me like a brick. That I have the freedom as a white woman in this country to go jogging anytime I please. And yet others do not. And yes, my heart is troubled. So now, I believe when I run, I will remember those the many who don't have the freedom that I do. Part of that way of works that go beyond even what we think is going to happen. This virus is a big deal. What it's revealing about us is even bigger. Humanity and how we interact with each other in all of this. Sometimes we show great kindness and love and all that I believe we should, that God asks us to share. And sometimes we see the real ugly stuff. In our own community, we've seen kindness in these past days. There was a group of women who went to celebrate Vi and her 100th birthday this week. Yes, with all of the social distancing and no one ever giving hugs. But that was showing some of that goodness and kindness and love. Friends who have shown kindness and love to Roger in his time of grief. Our childcare workers who every day come to work to tend and care for other people's children. And those of you now who are even at this time making face masks so that when the time comes and we reopen in-person worship, we will be ready, at least in that way. What is being revealed about you in this time? And we come back again to this text, back to the beginning. Jesus talks about going and preparing a place, and again, preparing a place for us, and we often see this in the frame of preparing a place in heaven for us to go. This is a text that's famously read at so many memorial services and funerals. Jesus preparing a place, that the mansion in heaven has many, many rooms and there's space for all of us. But I want to come back again to today and I want to say, Jesus, I need a place now. I need a place for this afternoon and for the tomorrow and the next week. And for however long, I need a place where I can feel comfort, where I can feel love. We are being invited into residing, living in a new way, I believe, in the midst of this desperate time. We are being invited into a way of a new connection to the heartbeat of God. And when each thing breaks in our life, one more job lost, one more life lost, one more act of violence, Jesus goes before us and is creating a place for our hearts to know love, creating a place for us to receive comfort, where love resides is in the heart. And that is the place that is being created and recreated for each of us in all of this. A new place where God's creation is always being made new, and a space where we need to let go of that which is not of that place of love. As I said, I'm recording this on Friday, and it is heading into this Mother's Day weekend, which will be different for all of us. So I've been thinking, of course, about my own mother, who's been gone for quite a few years now. My mom loved butterflies, and I have a plaque that actually hung in her home, the home I grew up in, for a long, long time. And one of the ways that she lived out her love for butterflies is she kind of co-opted our yard into making gardens. My dad over the years had not much grass to mow after a time because Mom created these gardens. And as a part of the gardens, the butterflies came. Butterflies are hard right now to see because of the goo, the mess, the chaos that we're in. This time in history is dark and sometimes very despairing. But out of that goo comes the beauty and the love of all of God's creation, including you. Always new, for as long as it takes this gooey, messy part, and whatever it takes, in the midst of that, I will have to go back to Jesus' words. Do not let your hearts be troubled. And I end with these particular pieces of the psalm that you heard earlier. I take refuge in you, Lord. Be a rock that protects me. Guide me and lead me. I entrust my spirit into your hands. May you know the peace of God in these days, and may you live in the love of the abundant life of Christ in all that you do. Be at peace, dear friends. Amen.